Hey guys, it's Yorkie here with some Project Cars multiplayer gameplay, and today we are going to be racing in a public lobby. But before I get into the actual video, I just wanted to make a quick shout out to a PS4 league that is starting up over on the GT Planet forums. It's a GT3 league. It's going to be starting on June the 21st. At the moment, the current entry list is full, however they are still letting people apply, as they do believe there probably will be a number of dropouts before the season actually starts. But yeah, if you're on the PS4 and you've been looking for a league with some good drivers, go check it out. I'll leave a link down in the description below so you can find out all the details. So, onto the actual race then. It's going to be a 5-lap race around the Le Mans circuit. As you can see, we're in the Aston Martin V12 Vantage GT3 car. We're in a GT3 class race. Just sat here. I am running a custom setup, by the way. I mentioned that at the start of the video here before we actually get into it. Now we're just waiting for that start sequence, and there is the green light there. So launching off the line, getting an okay-ish start. I think the McLaren may have jumped start the sequence a little bit. It made it a little bit of contact trying to squeeze between two cars. As we've got an Audi spinning in front of us, having to move to the left, try and avoid a tiny bit of contact there, but just about getting away with it. Lost a position or two. You can see cars squabbling up ahead. So we've got plenty of breathing room coming down into turn 1. So we're going to take it fairly easy. As you can see, dust being kicked up from cars running off onto the gravel. Also making contact with each other. A couple of spinners there. You can see cars recovering back onto the circuit. Just in front of us here as the Audi goes off to the right. It looks like we've got a couple of slow cars up in front of us. So we're going to have to back out as we come through this sequence of corners. Basically, like I said earlier, try and take it fairly easy. Try and avoid making contact where possible. We're looking to the outside of this Aston Martin round this right-hander here. However, not quite getting the run as a cone gets punted high off into the sky. A couple of cars slipping and sliding all over the circuit. I've got an Audi who's gone and dive bombed me down the inside there. Tiny little bit of contact, but nothing too major. Another Audi spinning right in front of us. So close to making contact with him there. Having to back out of the throttle to avoid that. Taking a quick look at the mirrors to see what's going on around me, see if I can pull in the slipstream of the Audi here, use that to my advantage, and also the custom setup with the lower wings that I was running to slipstream past. And now we've got a tiny little bit of breathing room both in front and to the rear as well. We do have a couple of cars in my slipstream, but I don't feel they're going to threaten me down into this first chicane along these milestone straights. You can see more contact up ahead, a couple of slower cars, some dust and dirt and smoke being kicked up from that. Looks like we're going to be slipping into the slipstream of this Z4 just up in front of me here, and we're going to see if we can close the gap to him down this next straight as we shift up through the gears into 6th gear. Basically just waiting for that toe to reel us in. It's starting to now, kind of, it looks like it, but it looks like there's a little bit of warping, rubber banding going on here. Going to take it fairly easy. I think I'm going to take it down the inside of this first BMW. Kind of semi have a look down the second, but it's not going to quite work. We've got a couple of cars spinning off to the left in front of us, managing to avoid them quite easily. Now we're going to tuck into the rear of the BMW here, kind of half sitting in the slipstream, but we're using that to our advantage, the straight line speed to pull up alongside, getting another position. We've got two McLarens here side by side, so we're going to switch to the right hand side of the circuit and slide past both of those with the added speed that we have. I think just the combination of the lower wings that I was running set up from the car and also picking up bits of slipstream from the cars in front of us, just allowing us to slide past very easily. So gaining a number of positions already around the first part of the lap, trying to stay out of trouble, as you've seen, and it's working quite well for us so far. We're in P7 up from P22. I was down in P23 after the spinner on the start finish straight, and it looks like we're taking up the slipstream of the Aston Martin. We're going to slide around the outside of him as we come into here, and he backs out of that, which allows me to somewhat take my line down the inside. I was a little bit cautious just in case he did brake a little bit too late and go a little bit deep into the corner, so I did give him a tiny bit of room to account for that, but it wasn't really needed. So now coming towards the final part of this first lap then, coming down towards the Porsche curves. I softened up the suspension an awful lot for this section. Should just help with the long sweeping corners, as I don't really need the responsiveness which the Aston Martin has. Its initial turn in is very good, as the McLaren's got straight on into the tyre wall on the outside there, the entrance to the first right-hander. Taking it fairly steady. Cars don't have the downforce that the LMP1 cars have, so you kind of have to be very patient with the throttle. Just feed the car through nice and steadily, like we just did so there. But yeah, like I was saying, the Aston Martin, it suffers from some mid-corner understeer. and it's quite bad, so soften up the suspension quite a significant amount to hopefully compensate for that. As we've got a parked car there on the left hand side. I believe he didn't move off the start finish line when the race actually started, so he's now a lap down, and as you can see we're in P5, and that is the top 4 runners up there in front of us, the first of them being 2 seconds and well, 2.7 seconds roughly. So just under 3 seconds have gone a little bit deep there into the first significant braking zone of turn 2. So having to recover the car back onto the circuit a little bit, however we didn't lose too much time. So you can see the guys up ahead battling. It looks like one of them or 2 of them have gone off here and possibly made contact. Yep, there's contact there. So McLaren spins off to the right hand side and the Audi is slowed down on the left. So that's allowed me to gain 2 positions there and step up into P3. We've also closed the gap on the next car. So you can see second and first. First obviously being up in the distance a bit further down this first part of the Mulsanne straight. And we are 1.5 seconds behind P2 and closing very, very rapidly, as you can see here. Obviously the lower wings working much to my advantage, and obviously now starting to pick up the slipstream as well, allowing us to close up even more speed, having a semi look down the inside down into this first braking point of the first chicane, however not really being able to make the move stick. So I'm going to line myself up for a move coming out the exit here, not really being able to tuck in behind him. Basically just driving around his outside. He's now going to tuck in behind me and trying to pick up my slipstream as we come down this second Mulsanne straight. But such was the speed difference coming out of the first chicane. And obviously set up as well, working very, very nicely. It's just allowing me to pull away from that R8. And now it's a pursuit to see if we can close on P1. He is 3.5 seconds, just over 3.5 seconds up the road. So we've got a little bit of work to do. Got to keep it fairly clean, keep it fairly smooth, and basically just see if we can reduce this gap over the next. Well, we've got about 2.5 laps to go. As you can see down in the bottom left, we're on our second lap. Getting a little bit wobbly under braking that, coming into that fairly slow right-hander. Using the curb on the exit, trying to use as much of the runoff as possible to try and basically get back on the power and start accelerating as quickly as possible, as basically a lot of your speed down these straights are determined by how good the exit was coming out of the previous corner. So if you get a good exit, your speed should be that little bit better down the far end of that straight. As you can see, just being very, very patient with the car, very relaxed, not hassling it too much, and basically just downshifting in a nice smooth fashion. This toe right-hander you do need to use first gear. Taking a little bit too much curb on the inside there, which did unsettle the car a little bit, made it slide through the corner. However, minimal opposite lock was needed to correct that. Obviously some throttle input as well, not quite going full throttle from the off there also helped. And as you can see, we are closing the gap to it's McLaren up in front, McLaren MP412C GT3 car. Got the gap down to 2.5 seconds now, so we've reduced it by a second already on this lap. It's quite a long lap, to be honest. It is a good 3 minutes and about 50 odd seconds, maybe 4 minutes. In fact, taking a look at the current lap time down in the bottom left, as we come now into the final set of chicanes. Yeah, it's around the 4 minute mark for the GT3 cars. Probably can go a little bit quicker, especially if we didn't make the mistake into the braking zone of turn 2. So yeah, 3:59.3, which I believe is a pretty good lap. I'm not 100% sure, I haven't really got any reference to compare it to. I've driven this car around the circuit a few times, however I've never really looked or remembered the lap times to see what would be a good lap, what is a bad lap. So I feel like it was a good lap. Apart from the mistake at the beginning, there wasn't too much where I could really improve. Maybe it'd be a little bit quicker through obviously this sequence of corners here, because obviously I was having to dart around cars, recovering after collisions, and also I feel I could have been a little bit more aggressive, a little bit quicker through the first chicane, as I obviously had the R8 there right in front of me, and I did have to account for him. But anyway, we are in the slipstream of this McLaren up in front of us. You can see the delta time in the bottom left dropping rapidly. You can see us visually closing at a very, very rapid rate. Having a look down the inside here, he's actually managed to slip past. Managed to slip past him as we come into the braking zone here, but I've got him braked a little bit too late, a little bit too deep. The rear end of the car was not quite there when I was turning in, and I did feel it starting to slide, so I basically had to get back on the brake a tiny little bit as well to reduce some of that speed, so I didn't want to spin off. Basically just ran in a little bit too deep, and the McLaren has gone and slipped back past. How we are a tenth up on our previous lap, which would have been the fastest lap that we've done of the race. So now got a little bit of work again to try and close back up to the McLaren and see if we can pass him once more. Gap is around a second right now. However, as you've probably guessed, the car setup being vastly different from the default one is making it fairly easy to close up on the other cars down the straights, and you can see the gap down to P3 is now over 10 seconds, over 11 seconds, and we're moving further away from them as well. So we've got plenty of breathing room to try and attack this McLaren up in front of us. Fuel appears to be good. Currently got the Motec display looking at the lap times, so you can see that. So P2 is showing my best lap, showing the time that I'm currently doing on my current lap, and it's giving me a split time as to how far I am ahead or how far I am behind the fastest lap. It's going to dip the wheel onto the grass there in the braking zone. As just as I was turning in, it's gone and sent the rear end of the car around. Had to slam on the brakes to basically reduce the speed and try and recover from that, which means I've gone and lost an awful lot of time. As you can see now, over 4 seconds behind P1. I'm just going to give myself a whole lot more work to do, and I've got a lot less time to actually do it in as well compared to the previous attempts in closing up that gap. As you can see, split time not good. It's all down to that spin in the rear end of the car, still not wanting to stick. He's coming through the braking zones. Just taking a look at the temperatures there, they seem fine. I did think that the car, because of the ease of it, wanted to break away from me, that I was possibly overheating the rear tyres, but the temperatures there look fine. There's nothing too alarming that I can see, so I think it may have just been me trail braking a little bit too much coming into the first right handle of the Porsche curves, and the car just not being as settled as I would have liked it to have been, but we managed to get away with it. So coming through now to start lap 4. As you can see, sat on the temperature Motec display screen there, basically having a look at the tyre pressures and also the brake temperatures. Brake temperatures obviously falling as we're going down the straights, not using them in any way. Let's just lift off through turn 1 there. Just try and make sure you try and keep to the right hand side of the circuit, and then basically once you've got the car straight and you've just gone past the first total sponsorship board on the right hand side, that's when you start braking for turn 2 and get it slowed down into second gear. So being fairly patient, as you can see, with the car not hustling it too much. Now I've got the speed over the McLaren, so I should be able to close the gaps down the straights. I feel like I am quicker than him. I seem that I am quicker than him. So we're going to push, but we're not going to push too hard to try and close the gap back. However, I've only got 2 laps to do it. So let's see if we can do that. See if we can get back up to the rear of the McLaren. Taking the first chicane fairly nice. It would have been a little bit tighter. Would have liked to have been a little bit tighter to the exit of the first right-hander, which would have opened up the left-hander a little bit more. As you can see, I had to use the brakes to slow down and get down into second gear. That is how I usually run anyway, but I just wanted to. It would have been nice to have opened up the corner a little bit more. And as you can see, that I switched the HUD display so you can see my braking and accelerating inputs coming through the corners. do believe the assists are on real, so you will see the traction control working on the accelerator. And obviously the car comes with ABS in the real world, so I have that as well, which will allow me to brake a little bit harder without the fear of locking up. However, there is a sweet spot to be found even with ABS on, which isn't quite full braking application, but it'll give you the maximum braking power, and it's exactly the same spot, I believe, without ABS. Obviously if you go past that, then generally the tyres are more likely to lock up. So play around with each car, hopefully you'll be able to find that braking sweet spot. So it's probably about 80% braking application. It's not quite the full 100. See me pumping the brake a little bit there. It's just a technique that I use when I'm not using ABS. There you can see roughly hovering around that mark as to how much brake you should be using. Yeah, I pump the brake a little bit to basically try and avoid locking the brakes. You can get a case where your braking application is initially good, and as you brake harder the wheels do lock, and then it can be a little bit harder to unlock them. You do have to come off the brake a fairly significant amount. So basically just got too deep that I made contact with the wall, but getting away with that, I was very, very light. Getting away with no or very minimal damage. Nothing that I've noticed anyway, but I do believe that this racing lobby did have damage turned off. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I haven't seen any damaged cars, and there's been a fair bit of contact at the start of the race, so I believe that that is the case. A little bit deep there coming out the final corner onto the start-finish straight as we now actually start the final lap as well. You probably saw me dancing on the brake and the accelerator through the chicane, basically just trying to keep the momentum and the speed of the car up, whilst also trying to get the car slowed down enough to actually navigate my way through a sequence of corners, and also keep it between the white lines as well. I like to try and keep myself within the track limits if possible. Basically run with, try and always make sure that I've got two wheels within those white lines, within the confines of the track, and basically just try and learn and find the speed that I need to. That was me obviously breaking those track limits. That there is fine. That was within them, and that was a pretty quick and nice smooth corner. So as you can see, we're on the final lap. We are fairly close to P1 up ahead. We are just about within his slipstream, so we'll probably see us closing, coming down this straight. I know I've got the speed over him anyway, and you can actually see that starting to happen now visually. And I'm actually going to fake a move down the inside here into the braking zone, basically just popping up just to make sure that if he is looking in his mirrors, just try and see if I can put him off a little bit, and then actually tuck him back into his dirty air. Took away some of the braking power. It's something that you need to watch out for when following other cars. Your braking efficiency isn't as good in the dirty air than it would be if you didn't have a car in front of you, so do take into account for that. You will have to brake earlier anyway, so go and fake another move. Coming down here, with the driver being on the left hand side of that car, he was more likely to have seen me doing that in his wing mirror. Yeah, McLaren doesn't have a rear view mirror. As you saw, it did go a little bit deep in the second part there, so I would like to believe that that fake move did work, and you see tucking right up underneath the rear of the McLaren, pulling out now down his inside, coming down into this right-hander here. We're kind of side by side. I'm going to brake it a little bit earlier to make sure we avoid making contact. It's giving me a tiny bit of room there on the inside there. Not really going to take it. It's not really worth it. I know that I can pick up the slipstream coming down here, and it should allow me to slip past. You can see slipstream effect now starting to work, as you see, closing up onto the rear end of his car. Going to move to the right hand side of the track here to slip past. He's going to block that though, so I had to back out the accelerator to avoid making contact, which is going to completely ruin the momentum and the run that I did have. I'm going to have to try and pick it back up again now. Again, faking another move coming down the inside here. He's not really having any of it. He's defending fairly well, staying tight here is very good defensive driving. He's gone a little bit deep there, and I'm going to tuck underneath him onto the outside of this right-hander. I'm going to see if I can hang it around the outside here, looking over to see where he is, just about managing to squeeze over on the curb there. He's just about giving me enough room. There's a very, very light tap as we come side by side down towards the Porsche curves. He's not quite there in front of me enough for me to tuck him behind safely and pick up the slipstream. There is a little bit of movement on multiplier at the moment, and obviously I don't want to make contact with him as we come down to this first right-hander. Gone a little bit deep and onto the grass, a little bit wide there in the braking zone, and I've had to tuck him behind him once again. His car getting a little bit sideways coming through the first of the left-handers in this double right-hander section, and then coming through this section here, trying to tuck underneath here, losing a little bit of downforce, got a little bit deep. He's absolutely nailed his line though, as you can see, and has got a very, very good run coming out the exit of here. So I've got the only chance that I've got is trying to make it back up again in the final chicanes that are coming up now. Basically just got to brake as late as possible, try and carry that speed and momentum, taking the first two very nicely, closing up quite significantly. If I could get a decent run coming out the exit here, which I do, getting in the undercut there, as you can see, going side by side as we come down towards the start finish line. It's a photo finish, and I'm not too sure who managed to pip who over the start finish line there. I believe that myself was in front where I perceived the start finish line to actually be. However, I'm not sure if that is the actual location of the start finish line. I think it may have been a couple of meters beforehand. As you can see there, it is classifying the McLaren in front of myself, so I am not too sure. Very, very close to cool. So that there is the final classification. However, it isn't the official results, as a number of people were dropped out, including the guy that I was racing over the start finish line. So yeah, very good race. Really, really enjoyed that. Probably the closest finish that I've had in Project Cars. But hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down below. Please give the video a rating, and if you are interested in that PS4 League, take a look at the description down below, and hopefully that will be for you. But thanks very much for watching, guys. Hopefully I shall see you in the next one. Take care.